Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu, and with me is Renu Kataria, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar meets his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in New Delhi. Says restoration of normal ties with China requires a restoration of normalcy in border areas. Bangladesh observes Genocide Day on 25th March to mark brutal killing of millions of Bangladeshis by Pakistani army on this day in 1971. United States and European Union announce a new partnership to reduce reliance on Russian energy. Hungary rejects Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's appeal for supply of weapons and support for sanctions on Russia's energy sector. Indian Minister Anurag Singh Thakur to embark on a 3-day visit to Dubai from Saturday to attend CEO roundtable with leading personalities of cinema, exhibition and television world. In Swiss Open Badminton, Indian shuttlers PV Sindhu and HS Pranoy storm into singles semi-finals of the tournament. And in cricket, 15th edition of Indian Premier League begins from Saturday. As we start the bulletin, we appeal to our listeners to stay safe from COVID-19 by following these 4 simple steps. Get fully vaccinated, wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. Now, the news in detail. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said restoration of normal ties with China will require restoration of normalcy in border areas. A report.
Briefing media following talks with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in New Delhi on Friday, Dr. Jaishankar said they discussed bilateral relations that have been disturbed as a result of Chinese actions in April 2020.
We met about 3 hours and addressed a broad and substantive agenda in an open and candid manner. We discussed bilateral relations that have been disturbed as a result of Chinese actions since April 2020. The occasion provided an opportunity to exchange views on major international issues, including Afghanistan and Ukraine. We also took up some other important concerns in our bilateral relationship, including education, travel, and commerce.
The minister described the current situation as work in progress, which is moving at a slower pace than desirable. He said his discussions with Foreign Minister Wang Yi were aimed at expediting the process.
We've had 15 rounds of talks between senior commanders, and progress has been achieved on several friction points from the disengagement perspective. This needs to be taken forward since the completion of disengagement is necessary for discussions on de-escalation to take place. I would describe our current situation as work in progress, obviously at a slower pace than desirable, and my discussions with FM Wang Yi today were aimed at expediting that process.
Dr. Jaishankar said the impact of tension in border areas on the overall India-China relationship has been visible in the last 2 years. He said this is only natural since peace and tranquility in border areas has been the foundation of stable and cooperative ties. He said Foreign Minister Wang Yi spoke about China's desire for a return to normalcy. He emphasized that frictions and tensions that arise from China's deployment since 2020 cannot be reconciled with normal relations between the 2 neighbors. Both ministers had an extensive exchange of views on a number of contemporary matters. Dr. Jaishankar laid out India's principled approach to international relations based on respect for international law, UN Charter and sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. He said disputes should be resolved without the use of threat or use of force, and nor should there be attempts to unilaterally change the status quo. He said where India and China are concerned, The relationship is best served by observing the three mutuals, that is, mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutual interest. Dr. Jaishankar said the occasion provided an opportunity to exchange views on major international issues including Afghanistan and Ukraine. Other important concerns in bilateral relationship including education, travel and commerce were also taken up. The minister said that so far as Afghanistan is concerned, India's policy is guided by the UN Security Council Resolution 2593. On Ukraine, both the ministers discussed respective approaches and perspectives, but agreed that diplomacy and dialogue must be the priority. During the meeting, Dr. Jaishankar also took up the predicament of Indian students studying in China who have not been allowed to return, citing COVID restrictions. He hoped that China will take a non-discriminatory approach since it involves future of many young people. Niharika Bhuvania for World News, All India Radio.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on Chinese Foreign Minister's visit to India. In conversation are Atul Aneja, International Affairs expert, and Manish Anand, journalist.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi today completed his New Delhi visit. On Friday, he met first the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, and then he held a 3-hour-long bilateral talks with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. The key takeaway of the meeting was the statement of Jaishankar that he said no relationship with China is not normal. That was in the backdrop of 2-year-long military standoff on the eastern line of actual control in the Ladakh region. Mr. Aneja, how do you see the statement of Jaishankar? That's quite upfront and very straightforward, that relationship is not normal.
I think so, because, India has made it very clear that any attempt at normalizing India-China relations is based on one precondition. That is, restoring the status quo ante at the border as it existed on April 2020, which essentially means that the Chinese have to first disengage from the border, go back to the positions which they had occupied before April 2020. This is in eastern Ladakh. And only then, once this has been accomplished, then the normalization of India-China relations can take place. The two are linked, and you cannot decouple normal economic and political relations from the situation on the border. Now, that has been India's consistent position. Today, when the Chinese foreign minister is here, we have made it very clear that we are inclined for a good, normal relationship. This happened during dialogue both with Mr. Jaishankar and with S. Doval. But please disengage from the border. And once you do that, then relationship will take its natural course. I'm not surprised at all. And I think this was necessary. And now the ball is in China's court. Whether they go ahead and disengage or start the process of disengagement or continue with status quo, in that case, I don't think India-China relationship is going to move forward.
In the meeting with the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, it has been reported in the media that in very plain words, it has been told to the Chinese Foreign Minister that the border standoff must immediately be resolved, which has been stuck for quite a long time. If we look back, the context of this visit is apparently the BRICS summit which China is going to host later this year and wants India to take part in this summit. In 2017 also, the Doklam standoff was there. That was resolved before the BRICS summit. Do you think that this outreach on the part of China is because of the BRICS summits that they are holding later this year?
Definitely BRICS summit. And as you said, and I was in China at that time, when the Xiamen summit took place after the Doklam crisis was resolved. And a similar pattern could follow because it is a matter of prestige for China, which is going to host the BRICS summit again, to have all the members of the emerging economies of the BRICS to be present in Beijing. And it's going to be a big embarrassment if Prime Minister Modi is not there and the seat of India is vacant and he attends to it only virtually. So that's number one. But I don't think that's the only reason. I think there's another reason why Foreign Minister Wang Yi has come and why I'm I'm somewhat optimistic that situation on the border might change, and that is because of the situation in Ukraine. Now, because of the situation in Ukraine, the world has got polarized. China and Russia seem to be on one side broadly, and it is very important for both Russia and China to have India on their side or at least continue its position of neutrality. I think that world balance of power changes the way India behaves. And I think that's a very important additional factor, the broader geopolitical scenario, apart from the pull of the BRICS summit, which has motivated this visit, and why I think there is some ground of optimism that because of these conditions, the Chinese may agree to ending the standoff or at least taking steps in that direction. And I think it's also very relevant that the Chinese are told this, which both NSA Doval and EM Jaishankar have said, that please de-escalate the border. I think one very interesting thing is that India today spoke with one voice, both at the NSA level and in fact complemented each other extremely well, so that there is no ambiguity in the messaging which goes to the Chinese.
He went to Pakistan first. In fact, he has been on 3 nations tour. He has gone to Kathmandu also tonight. In Pakistan, he made a remark which didn't go well in New Delhi, that when he said, Kashmir, we have heard again the calls of many of our Islamic friends, and China share the same hope. That statement by the Chinese foreign minister on the eve of his New Delhi visit was definitely not in good spirit.
Yeah, but I think so when you're on Pakistani soil and if Pakistan arranges your meeting with the OIC, I think that the Pakistanis will bargain with the Chinese to say something on Kashmir. To be honest, I think from our side, the response has been absolutely correct. That for us, whatever be the circumstances, you cannot internationalize Kashmir. Just as we don't internationalize at world forums the Tibet issue or the Xinjiang issue or the Taiwan issue, I think it is expected from the Chinese to respect and to reciprocate the gestures which India makes. And I think that point was made by the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson the day before Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit. Yet I do not see that statement is so damaging as to not look at the big picture and see the possibility of a rapprochement between India and China, which are totally in a different league. We are the emerging economies and rising powers to be caught up with what happens in Pakistan. So I think India has taken a very mature decision to engage with it. And if the end result is the resolution of the border, and not the entire border, but disengagement in Eastern Ladakh, the revival of India-China relations on completely equal terms, and revival of the economic relationship, trade and commerce, I think this move today may turn out to be a turning point.
Another statement by Jaishankar, in fact, he had been very forthright in his media statements today. He said that India wants China to have independent relations with China should have independent relations with India. There should be no external interference in the bilateral relationship. In fact, previously also Jaishankar has said that India would want China to have relationships based on 3 mutuals: mutual respect, mutual sensitivity and mutual interests. How do you look at Jaishankar's statement in this context?
A few decades ago, the US used to do this. They would hyphenate the India-Pakistan relationship, which would have meant that if there is a US leader coming to India, I would also go to Pakistan. I think we objected very strongly to it that both are independent relationships and we cannot be clubbed with Pakistan. I think we are making the same statement to China that don't link us up with Pakistan because we are in a different league. We are the rising and emerging powers and we have an independent relationship of that. And Jaishankar has actually put a doctrine to that, the 3 points which you mentioned, that this has to be the guiding principles of India-China relationship. And I think that is another very major point and takeaway from this visit, that we are independent and whatever be your relationship with Pakistan or X, Y, Z, India-China relationship have a standing of their own and you cannot look at this relationship through the prism of Pakistan. So I think that message, again, apart from the border, is an important message which EM Jaishankar has made very bluntly and plainly. But I can tell you with my stay in China, the Chinese, in the end, they respect frankness, they respect strength, they respect people who walk the talk, as India has done in the case of Eastern Ladakh. We had from day one that we will normalize our relationship only once the status quo ante is restored. Until this day, from the time when Prime Minister Modi went to Ladakh and made his speech, to today when NSA Doval met State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi, that consistency and that steadfastness and fortitude is something which the Chinese respect. And I think in the end, it is good to be straight up and be frank with the Chinese, with the goodwill of finally, turning this relationship around into a relationship of the Asian century. But it can be done only if the Chinese change their behavior. So the ball is now in China's court. If it is smart, it would do what is required to be done for much larger interests, not only between India and China, but for the region as well, for the entire Eurasian region particularly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Atul Aneja. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bangladesh observed the Genocide Day today to mark the brutal killing of millions of Bangladeshis of the then East Pakistan on this day in 1971. The Pakistani Army launched Operation Searchlight on 25th March all over East Pakistan, which culminated in untold miseries for the people of Bangladesh. Our Dhaka correspondent has filed this story.
On the occasion of the Genocide Day to mark the brutal Operation Searchlight launched by Pakistan Army in 1971, Bangladesh Foreign Minister Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen said today that it was shameful and unfortunate that Pakistan had not put the people responsible for the genocide on trial. He expressed the hope that the next generation of Pakistan would acknowledge the crimes of 1971 and conduct trial of the perpetrators of the genocide in Bangladesh. Dr. Momen said that Bangladesh is continuing with its efforts to get March 25th recognized as the Bangladesh Genocide Day. He said that commemoration of 25th March as Genocide Day will not only be paying homage to the martyrs of 1971 but also creating awareness against genocide which happened in the world elsewhere or still taking place. Talking about the heinous act of the Pakistan Army during the Operation Searchlight starting on March 25th, 1971, Dr. Momen said that it showed the clear intention of the Pakistan Army to destroy certain sections of society and killing of individuals based on religion and political belief. The High Commission of India in Dhaka also paid a solemn tribute on this occasion. The Chancery Complex observed a blackout to honor the sacrifice of untold millions of Bangladeshi people killed and women assaulted during the brutal Operation Searchlight. Rajesh Jha for World News, All India Radio, Dhaka.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Welcome back to World News. The United States and European Union have announced a new partnership to reduce the continent's reliance on Russian energy. It's a step top officials characterized as the start of a years-long initiative to further isolate Moscow after its invasion of Ukraine. US President Joe Biden asserted that Russian President Vladimir Putin uses energy to coerce and manipulate his neighbors and uses the profits from its sale to drive his war machine. Under the plan, the US and other nations will increase liquefied natural gas exports to Europe by 15 billion cubic meters this year. Ursula von der Leyen, head of the EU's executive arm, said it is important for Europe to shift away from Russia toward the other energy supplies that are trustworthy, friendly and reliable. Hungary's Prime Minister has rejected an appeal from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to supply Ukraine with weapons and support sanctions on Russia's energy sector. Prime Minister Viktor Orban has said in a video posted to social media that Zelensky's requests were against Hungary's interests and that sanctions on Russian energy would mean that Hungarian economy would slow down and then stop within moments. The rejection came after Zelensky on Thursday addressed a meeting of the European Union leaders in Brussels where he specifically addressed Orban, who is widely considered Russian President Vladimir Putin's closest ally in the EU. On Friday, Orban said that 85% of Hungary's gas and more than 60% of its oil comes from Russia, and that blocking Russian energy exports would force Hungarians to pay the price of the war.
The crucial session of the Pakistan National Assembly, in which a no-confidence motion against Prime Minister Imran Khan was to be moved by the opposition, has been adjourned till Monday without tabling of the resolution. Leader of the opposition, Shahbaz Sharif, was scheduled to table the no-trust motion against the Pakistan Premier. Notably, acting on mutual agenda to oust Imran Khan, the opposition parties had submitted the no-confidence motion in the National Assembly on 8th of March. In the 342-member assembly, the Imran Khan government requires at least 172 members to sail through the no-confidence vote. India's Information Broadcasting Minister Anurag Thakur will be on a 3-day official visit to Dubai from Saturday. During the visit, the minister will attend CEO roundtable with leading personalities of the cinema exhibition and television world. He will also visit the India Pavilion at the Dubai Expo, where Media and Entertainment Week has been going on throughout the week. The minister will also meet ministers and industry leaders during the visit. On Sunday, Mr. Thakur will visit India Pavilion at the Dubai Expo to participate in the event celebrating and taking Indian media and entertainment industry global. Eminent film personality Ranveer Singh is likely to join the minister during the visit. Minister will interact with many leaders of the sector during his visit to the pavilion. He will meet Jamal Al-Sharif, Executive Board Member at Dubai Film and TV Commission, Dubai Development Authority at the Expo on 28th of March.
Ace Indian shuttler Pusarla V. Sindhu won the quarterfinal against Michelle Lee in straight games by 21-10 and 21-18 and entered the semi-final of women's singles in the ongoing Swiss Open 2022 Badminton Championship. And in men's single, Pranoy HS also won on against his countryman Parupalli Kashyap in straight game by 21-16 and 21-16. Later in men's singles, Kidambi Srikanth will play against Danish player Anders Antonsen, and in mixed doubles, Ashwini Ponnappa and Reddy N. Sikki will play against Malaysian player Vivian Hu and Lim Chiu Sien. The Indian Premier League returning for its biggest season with a galaxy of top names and 2 new franchises, expanding the world's richest cricket competition to 10 teams for its 15th edition. The Indian Premier League gets underway on Saturday with defending champions Chennai Super Kings taking on Kolkata Knight Riders at Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai in the opening game. The match will begin at 7:30 p.m. Indian time on Saturday. We have a desk report.
It is being termed as a momentous occasion as the 15th edition of the IPL will welcome the fans back to the stadium after a brief hiatus owing to the pandemic. Ardent cricket fans are all set to witness nail-biting matches, cheering for their favourite players at the most anticipated cricket tournament of all time. The matches will be played across stadiums in Mumbai, Navi Mumbai and Pune, with crowds in the cricket-loving nation will initially at least be limited to 25% capacity as per COVID protocols. The group games will be restricted to 4 venues, 1 in Pune and 3 in Mumbai in Maharashtra. With the addition of 2 new teams, Lucknow Super Giants and Gujarat Titans, the IPL will have 74 matches this season, including the playoffs and the final. The teams will be divided into 2 groups of 5 based on their previous IPL records. The IPL this season promises to be the first to be played entirely in India since 2019 because of the coronavirus pandemic. 4-time IPL winners Chennai announced that Mahendra Singh Dhoni has handed over the captaincy to Ravindra Jadeja after making the team one of the most successful since the league started in 2008. The Rohit Sharma-led Mumbai Indians have been the most successful IPL team, winning a record 5 titles in 2013, 2015, 2017, 2019 and 2020. Having tried and failed to win the IPL title for over 8 seasons, as skipper of Royal Challengers Bangalore, home superstar Virat Kohli has also stepped aside with South Africa's Faf du Plessis taking charge. International T20 greats such as Australia's David Warner and England's Jos Buttler will be back for 2 months of high-octane cricket, but fellow Englishman Ben Stokes and West Indies veteran big hitter Chris Gayle are big names who will be missing. Swati Rakheja, Sports Desk.
India's Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav on Friday informed that October 5th has been designated as National Dolphin Day to be celebrated every year to create awareness for conservation of dolphins. In a tweet, Mr. Yadav stated that generating awareness and community participation is integral for conservation of the indicator species. He chaired the 67th meeting of the Standing Committee of the National Board for Wildlife in New Delhi on Friday. Dolphins act as ideal ecological indicators of a healthy aquatic ecosystem, and conservation of the dolphins will benefit the survival of the species and people dependent on the aquatic system for their livelihood. Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Let us take a look at the press reports on China. Many media houses report that visiting Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met NSA Ajit Doval and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. Media houses have carried prominently that Chinese Foreign Minister arrived in India on an unannounced visit after rounding up his visit to Afghanistan. Al Jazeera reports China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has drawn a rebuke from the Indian government ahead of his visit to New Delhi on Friday, upsetting his host with remarks made in Pakistan. The print writes China's Wang Yi lands in India with diplomatic outreach, gets cold reception before talks. The New Indian Express reports the government on Thursday said it has been taking up the Chinese authorities the issue of the return of Indian students to China to resume their studies. Business Standard writes the US is no longer dominating several advanced technologies, an influential American Senator Jack Reed has observed here, saying that China, India and Russia have advantages on hypersonic. The print writes, crisis hit Sri Lanka, gets big on $14 billion China-backed port city, wants India to invest. China has invested $1.4 billion in the strategically located project, but the Rajapaksa government wants India to invest in the potential metropolis, which is Sri Lanka's first SEZ. The Guardian reports China is finalizing security deal with Solomon Islands to base warships in the Pacific. The Guardian reports Taiwan may extend conscription as Ukraine crisis stokes China fears. Reuters writes US President Joe Biden on Thursday said that China knows its economic future is tied to the West after warning Chinese leader Xi Jinping that Beijing could regret siding with Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Now let us have some brief news from Afghanistan. ANI reports that the Taliban spokesperson in Afghanistan denied all the rumors relating to the replacement of the group's Prime Minister Mullah Hassan Akhund. Pakistani newspaper Dawn reported that several social media inputs suggested that Taliban group's deputy PM Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar was replacing the group's PM. ANI reports that India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said that China has not invited India to the Afghanistan meeting that is set to take place later in March. Tulu News reports that Special Representative of the Russian President Zamir Kabulov heading a delegation visited Kabul and called on Foreign Minister Mavlavi Amir Khan Muttaqi. According to Amaj News, the U.S. Special Envoy for Afghan Women, Girls and Human Rights, Reena Amiri, said there are more restrictions on Afghan women than other countries in the Muslim world. Amaj News writes that the special unit of Taliban, Badri forces, in a video clip warned that they will uproot the fences erected by Pakistan on Durand Line and retake its territory that is under the control of Pakistan. Tolu News reports that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and negotiations over technical issues of the Tapi pipeline project have been held and the project will resume in the spring.
Now let's have a look at what made headlines in Nepal. The print writes Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will look into key agreements on Belt and Road Initiative with Nepal on his 3-day visit to the country. Business Standard reports Nepal Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba will travel to India next week on a maiden 3-day official visit during which he would hold talks with his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi with other senior leaders.
A quick look at the headlines once again. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar meets his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in New Delhi. Says restoration of normal ties with China requires restoration of normalcy in border areas. Bangladesh observes Genocide Day on 25th March to mark brutal killing of millions of Bangladeshis by Pakistani army on this day in 1971. United States and European Union announce a new partnership to reduce reliance on Russian energy. Hungary rejects Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's appeal for supply of weapons in support for sanctions on Russia's energy sector. Indian Minister Anurag Singh Thakur to embark on a 3-day visit to Dubai from Saturday to attend CEO roundtable with leading personalities of cinema exhibition and television world. In Swiss Open Badminton, Indian shuttlers PV Sindhu and HS Pranoy storm into singles semi-finals of the tournament. And in cricket, 15th edition of Indian Premier League begins from Saturday. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Greece on their Independence Day. And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.